Hello everyone, today I'll be turning this sheet of 1/2-inch plywood into a shield. A Viking shield. I'll start by marking out the center of the shield, making sure I have sufficient coverage for my desired size. Now, the standard size for historically accurate Viking shield has a diameter of 32 to 38 inches. And while the max I could do is about 32 inches based on my sheet size, I'm making mine at 30 inches, given I'm not a big, bulky, muscular Viking, and 30 inches covers my torso perfectly. I'll drill a hole in the middle of the shield and keep the bit stuck in the wood. I'll use the good old-fashioned string and pencil method before realizing that I cut my string to the diameter of the shield instead of the radius. My first mistake of many. After drawing a perfectly shaped circle, I will plop the boss where it usually goes and trace it out before realizing yet again that it'd be more useful if I trace out the inside of this flat part, since that's what I'll actually be cutting. After using the string method to create yet another perfectly made circle, I can yoink the drill bit and get to cutting. And with that, I now have a perfectly cut circle of plywood that's shaped like a shield. I'll give the middle a good smack to make a hole where my hand will eventually go for when I have the shield equipped. Now that all the cutting and shaping is done, the next step is painting. However, before I can gently caress my wood with a brush, I'm going to have to harshly caress it with sandpaper. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find the handle that I could put the sandpaper into like a normal person, but hey, it's a give and take relationship. I make life hard for myself sometimes, so it only seems fair that life returns the favor. I would have had to manhandle the sheet of sandpaper with my bare hands anyways in order to reach the inner circle and crevices, so it really didn't matter in the end. The byproduct of sanding is that you're able to reveal a lot of secrets that your material has hidden.
Uh-oh.
Every rose has a thorn, and this thorn takes the place of a lip I don't want. The rose, however, is this majestic defect that adds so much character to the piece, so in the end, I'm glad the lip is there, and this is what I had to say about it.
Oh well.
What I would have been really grateful for, however, is a lower grit sandpaper, because sanding this sheet took a really long time. After about halfway through, I had this to say about it. My arms are tired. To add to my suffering, I thought about the logic behind sandpaper and how vigorously rubbing two things together creates friction, resulting not only in heat, which I was feeling more and more to the point of literally needing to cool down, but also the deterioration of not only the plywood, but also the sandpaper itself, meaning it'll be less effective at doing its one and only job, meaning I'll have to more vigorously drag this ever-decreasingly rough sheet of sandpaper back and forth across this shield-like shape until I can confidently wipe my hand all over it in any direction without getting cut, poked, or splintered. Once sanding is complete, I'll compress some air in a container and blast it through a nozzle to blow away any dust. There's still one more step before painting is applied, and that is applying primer. The words on the can say to, and I quote, "Shake can vigorously until ball inside can rattles." My understanding of what the substance in this can does is seal off moisture from finding its way in, while also providing a more enjoyable experience for painting, meaning my shield will last much longer for the times it's not out in battle, and it will look better doing so. Now, the words on the can say to shake, spray, and have it upside down all at once in hopes that it will finally get its act together so I can achieve a nice, even spray to spray onto my circle-like shield. Why are you making a shield, I hear you ask? I'm not just making a shield because I want to. It just so happens that I am a groomsman for my friend's Viking-themed wedding. And for this wedding, the wedding party's attire is all inspired by traditional Viking style. This means we're dressed in armors, furs, and weapons. One personality trait I've always tried to achieve is uniqueness. If I was going to have a centerpiece on my appearance, something as big and noticeable as a shield, I wanted it to be the one and only to exist in the world. Not something anyone can buy on Amazon. Anyways, with a dry time of an hour gone by, it's finally time for paint. A little bit more shaking will prepare the paint for application. I'll pull out these 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 2 inches, and a 2.5 inch brushes, as well as some painter's tape. I realized that the 2 inch brush is too big to properly dip into the paint, so I'll use a 1.5 inch instead. Since I've rarely ever painted, I decided to start with the back of the shield to first get a feel for the art, and let me tell you, there's something therapeutic about how the paint just does its thing. I'm just making sure that there's an even coat everywhere, while getting in all the nooks and crannies to make sure it not only looks good, but the paint, alongside with the primer, adds more sealing power to the piece, ensuring the shield will last generations of dynasties. While the shield is set aside to dry, it's the perfect time to start on the handle. I have this piece of wood here that I've cut to be 27 inches, giving me the most amount of surface area to attach it to the shield, but not so much that it's still all hidden from enemy eyes. This is just a 2x4 cut down the middle, so now it's a 2x2. Here is a chisel set I bought like 10 years ago because I've always wanted to do something with wood. I figured impulsively buying tools would jumpstart that ambition, and I'm gonna say it did, just 10 years later. Now, before any woodworking people yell at me, I knew fully well going into this that using a 2x4 that was laying around for who knows how long isn't ideal for this kind of work. This was, however, what was available to me, and honestly, it was perfectly imperfect. See, for this project, I made this agreement with myself, despite my inner perfectionist feelings, that states I'm not aiming for perfection. I don't believe anything I can do is perfect, and while that can sound depressing or self-critical, it's reality. Also, I have a huge time crunch, so I kinda just had to bumble my way through this, hoping nothing too untoward happens. Anyways, chiseling was taking too long, so I thought I'd bring out the old jigsaw once more to make short work of the bulk of it. I'll do the same on the other side to shape this stick cosplaying as a Minecraft torch into not that. Then it's back to chiseling for realsies to give the handle some nice curves and slopes. Once the majority of the shaping is done, I'll mark out the area for my hand to go. Realize the jigsaw is still available for use, and then start chiseling again. As you can see here and here, this 2x4 is holding up to the stereotypical standard that everyone holds common 2x4s across the world to. They will always be the last chosen for delicate woodworking projects because they have the tendency to split. The handle has been shaped, and is now time for even more sanding. I managed to get it done without burning my hand, so it's time to bring the shield back and do a quick fit check. Now that the fit has been checked, it's time to flip over to the front and paint the face historically accurate, yet personalized. For something that a bunch of people are going to see, I scoured the internet and then scoured again for any inspiration, and while I was a fan of this design, and this one, I knew that even if I was close with making it look symmetrical, even if they'd be a little bit off, it'd drive me crazy. I also liked this one. However, I liked it because it took advantage of the shield being made of planks, something my shield isn't made from. Although, that gave me the exact inspiration I was looking for. Among all the uniqueness I lay claim to, I am also a man that finds beauty in simplicity, and when it comes to designs, I tend to lean more towards the asymmetrical look. With all that being said to you, and also to me, by me as a part of my whole thought process, I landed on the classic Pokeball design, separating the shield into two colors starting from here and ending down there. Using some basic math and a healthy amount of estimating, I'll mark out where to lay a strip of tape diagonally down the face to separate it in half so I can paint the black part. There really isn't much to it, except making sure to get in all the nooks and crannies, as well as this majestically odd defect. After letting it dry, I eagerly ripped off the tape to paint the other side, except the exact moment I did this, I realized I needed to paint the second coat, and could have left it on. After reacting appropriately, I replaced the tape I just ripped off to do just that. While the second coat is drying, I went out to forage for some wild nails. There just so happens to be an old eerie rundown house I came across which hides a lot of nails. Story goes, my grandparents lived in this house, and while they're not here on Earth anymore, a small part of them will be at my side protecting me from enemies in the form of a shield, the same way these nails protected them from the harsh Canadian winters. Now, these nails are far too long and rusty for what I wanted, so I'll grind them down and give them a good polish to restore them new again. It's back to my shield to paint the other half of it green, specifically avocado. This is because the colors of the wedding are black and military green, and this is the closest I could get to that color. So I'll just get to painting and oh my gosh, what is that? Now it's not noticeable on camera at all, but this might as well have looked like this IRL to me. Not at all what I wanted. I decided to stick to the plan and push forward, hoping it would all kind of work out in the end. Turns out, the laws of paint still apply here, and in the end, and after the second coat, the green darkened to the perfect shade. One thing I forgot to do was sand in between coats, but at least I'll do that after the second. It's looking pretty good, yet very bland. Obviously, I need some kind of pattern, so I had the idea of using this defect and highlighting it, and do the same to this one and this one, courtesy of my inspiration earlier. This is my favorite part of the shield, using the natural blemishes and turning them into a piece of art, or that was the goal. I'm not convinced that this paint is great for this kind of work, and that taking the cheap option was the best way. This water-based latex paint was not spreading nicely, dried very quickly, and peeled off if handled the wrong way. I was grateful for the small brush though, yet it still was not small enough for the two narrower crevices, so I kinda just had to act like it wasn't a problem, and then quickly wipe away all the excess. A way that worked pretty good was to just push a glob of paint down the crack with my finger. I also found out that I ran out of finger real estate real fast, so I opted for paper towel. After 2 or 3 coats of white, my worrying subsided and I was pleasantly surprised by the results. Feeling my ego rise, I wanted to add even more creativity, and this was my choice. That decision felt like how I imagined getting an Avatar The Last Airbender arrow tattooed on your face while blackout drunk would feel. You can't paint over tattoos, but you can paint over paint, and I needed to anyways, so cheers to silly ideas with no consequences. And with that, I now have a fully painted shield. The next step in this longer than I would have liked project is fashioning a leather strip to the circumference of the shield. I have this 1-inch wide strip of leather, which worked, however, I would have preferred 2 inches or even 1.5. Nonetheless, I still must proceed. The leather will be fastened onto the rim as well as the face of the shield, but as you can see here, it doesn't stretch much, causing bunching on the face. These tacks will be the fasteners, and with a little bit of math, I marked out where each of them will go as a way to keep things looking intentional and also making sure I don't run out of fasteners. Heat causes things to expand, so I figured I'd try moistening the leather in cool water to try to shape it into a curve rather than a line. It kinda worked, and so begins the tedious process of making sure the leather is where it should be, having it stretch as much as it can, and nailing these super tiny things in. After trying different techniques, I found that using pliers with the nose of a needle works well to tack in the tack, so that my hand would be free to tighten up the leather. This roll of leather wasn't enough to make it all the way around, however, but I had a solution for that. I got 2. Keeping with the look of intentionality, I'll cut off the already attached piece of leather specifically here as to have the start and end of the strip coordinate with the color divide. I noticed that the color of the two strips are ever so slightly off, even though you can't really tell on the camera again.
Why? Why?
After reacting appropriately, I got started on repeating the process. Now with the rim done and looking good, I'll add another 47 tacks to the face in a less tedious process. And now that that's done, it's not looking good. These were way more prominent than I could have imagined. Fortunately, I had a solution. A steamer. I'll hold the steamer for a couple seconds on each area in between the tacks for 4 areas at a time, and then hold it down. The idea is that as the leather cools, it will be reshapen to the new position, and even it adhere to the shield. The results were surprising, and I felt really good about how it worked. Even the joint looked clean. Now it's time to attach the handle. I'll start by marking it out, and then I'll mark out where the nails will go, and drill holes, and then drill again with the handle clamped to the shield. These are just extra steps because 1, I can be confident that the handle will line up perfectly, and 2, I didn't really plan anything out, so I ended up separating one step into multiple. Now, you might be thinking, what? Nails shouldn't be fastened into pre-drilled holes. That kind of defeats the purpose of the nail's one and only job. However, because of how the handle was splitting into pieces while I was whittling it into shape, and because of the awkward scenario of attaching it to the shield, I ran the risk of splitting it in half if I didn't pre-drill. Not to worry though, I applied a healthy amount of glue to the surface of the shield and made sure to fill up the holes as well to compensate for this. With the handle tightly secured, I will sink in the nails and wait for it all to dry. And finally, the last step is to attach the centerpiece, called the boss. This 12 gauge, 18 centimeter diameter dome of iron was forged in the blacksmith of Grimfrost, the supplier of the shows Vikings and Game of Thrones. I'm definitely not sponsored. I did, however, want to give them a shout out for their absolutely monstrous 2-inch long hand-forged iron nails that are used to fasten the boss to the shield. I'll admit, I took a long look at these and seriously wondered if I made a huge mistake trying to tackle this project. Mistake or not, the boss should be centered on the shield and holes pre-drilled again. I wanted to be clever with it, so I made one of the holes line up with the handle so that a nail would be able to hold everything together. These nails are about 1/2 inch at the thickest, and because I'm still worried that the wood will split or make room for the nail in a way I don't want, I want it to be safe than sorry. Fits will be tested, and I'm aiming for them to barely not sink all the way since I can't really glue the boss onto the shield, and so these will be the only things holding it in place. And this... this is not working. What I failed to realize is that the holes on the boss are actually smaller than the nails. Moreover, the nails are square, and the holes are, well, holes. Circular holes. And trying to hammer the nails in so that they're snug against something that isn't an anvil is all but futile. As annoying as this was to me, and I definitely was not going about it the right way, it's all very intentional and very smart, because 2 strongly wedged pieces of iron make them near impossible to be pulled apart. Understanding that did not help me in my endeavors though, so I continued to caveman my way through this. I figured I'd pre-nail all the nails into the boss and then give the last little whack on the shield. But the shield was at work here, and in fact working against me, in that it was distributing the force of the hammer all across itself, making hammering in the nails unachievable. I can't lay the shield flat because of the handle, which ended up falling off. Oh well. At least I tried. And succeeded! I have no footage after that because of time restraint and honestly frustration, but
I fixed it.
I reattached the handle in the same fashion, this time using a screw from the handle to the shield hidden by the boss. I used this as my anvil, placing the shield so that the boss went into the middle there, so I was absolutely able to wail on nails to bend them over. And with that, it's finished just in time for the wedding.